listeners, it's good to have you join us today on another intriguing and expository episode of our program series, Infrastructure Dimensions and Economic Development on Armor Gauge Radio Communications. Well, I remain your host, Titilola Ogushono. On today's episode, we will be discussing the barriers to capital access faced by small and medium enterprises called SMEs in developing economies. SMEs are the backbone, the driving force of most economies, particularly developing nations. They drive innovation, employment, productivity, and they spur economic growth and development. However, the reality is that SMEs in most developing economies encounter significant challenges in accessing adequate capital, finance, funds, and this hinders their ability to innovate and remain competitive in the global markets. Thus, reality of these small and medium enterprises is that there is a huge capital access gap. In fact, statistics have shown that 50%, in fact, in some cases over 50% of SMEs in developing economies lack access to finance. In fact, in Africa, as at 2019 report, the trade finance gap stood at about 81.8 billion USD. That was a report according to AFDP. In Bangladesh, it was about 2.8 billion financing gap. In Nigeria, according to PwC report that I saw, we have a financing gap of about 3 billion per annum. Well, there have been various interventions set up by the federal government to address this finance gap, but the reality is that we still have this huge gap, in existence. There was another report that I saw that in MENA region, that's the Middle East and North Africa, about 50% of firms do not have access to credit. That is that about a third, in fact, about a third of firms actually identified in the report that a major factor that was a major constraint to them was lack of access to finance. So the capital access gap for most SMEs in developing economies is estimated to be about $2.1 trillion, and that is huge. And so the reality is that statistics also show that about 70% of SMEs have to rely on informal sources, and these informal sources will actually come at a very high cost, and that would impact profitability, that will impact the ability of SMEs to innovate, to produce, to expand, and that will impact the level of economic growth, and of course is going to affect the level of economic development in such economies, in such nations. And if we look around the globe, there are quite a huge number of SMEs, in fact MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises. So if they take up a larger percentage of businesses across the globe, is what considering a major factor that would affect them, because definitely is a major factor that would determine the level of growth in developing economies. According to MSME Economic Indicators database of 2019, the record, around the globe, the East Africa, the Pacific, we have over around 2 million MSMEs. In the Middle East and North Africa, we have over 10 million MSMEs. In Europe and Central Asia, we have over 35 million MSMEs. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we have over 17 million MSMEs. In North America, we have over 33 million MSMEs according to the MSME Economic Indicators database 2019 records. In South Asia, we have over 75 million MSMEs, and of course in Sub-Saharan Africa we have over 48 million MSMEs. So definitely when we say that the SME, even the MSMEs, So we'll be considering those factors, those constraints, the challenges, those barriers, faced by SMEs in accessing finance, particularly in developing countries, in developing nations, in developing economies. The first one, as simple as it may sound, what research has shown is that administrative body, long and complex, loan procedures has proven to be a major factor why SMEs do not have access to, adequate finance. Several studies have shown that the length and complexity of loan application process is an important impediment for access to finance in developing countries. And when we are talking, it relates to constrained faced by firms when they are applying for loans, for bank loans, for facilities. So we are looking at how easy is it for firms to access finance in banks. Look at the speed, how fast is it to access finance. You look at how convenient, how seamless the process is. You look at how flexible the process is. In reality, you realize that the procedures are really tedious. The procedures are not seamless. It's not easy to access finance, and that will actually discourage a lot of SMEs. According to OECD report of 2019, the OECD report argued that most MSMEs in North Macedonia were constrained in their access to finance by the complexity and long application process. So the need to streamline those processes is actually very important. Then we also know we're not saying streamline the process at the expense of due diligence, at the expense of checking the creditworthiness of the client, of the intending borrowers, but the process should be streamlined. The process should be made as seamless as it could be. Because of this complexity in the loan process, and research has shown that this is a major obstacle to financing of businesses, and that's a major reason why SMEs, most of them resort to informal financing. They resort to talking to friends. In fact, they resort to taking it from other sources, and which will come at a very high rate. And when interest rate is high, we are going to talk about the next factor that would also, affect the level of productivity of most firms. Another report also revealed that firms accuse banks of requiring too much information. And why this information? Why do you need too much? Is it actually necessary to access all of this information? And also the slow loan process. However, other schools of thought have also said that when firms are complaining about too much information, it could also signify the unwillingness of firms to share important business information. So that should be a midpoint to find out, is it a question of having too much information? Are they really necessary, or is it a question of the firms not willing to share too much business information? But research has shown proven that the administrative body, the long and complex loan procedure is a major factor that has been encouraging a lot of SMEs from accessing finance. And also that research has also shown that the long time needed for loan to be applied could also be an indicator of weaker banks' efficiency, effectiveness in the credit process, or extensive and complicated procedures. And one thing I realized that because of this long procedure that opened up market for the fintechs, that's because the loan process is very seamless. So you just go there for the click, you can get access to credit easily. However, the interest rate is very high. So that's a way, should be a way to streamline the process, to make it more convenient, to make it more accessible, to make it the number of days shorter. So it becomes a win-win for both ends, for both parties. So we will consider the second factor, the second challenge, the second barrier that SMEs face in accessing finance in developing economies, and that is interest rates, particularly high interest rates. Okay, because high interest rates are a major impediment to finance. So interest rate could either mean what lenders, that's the percentage of the principal that lenders will charge on loans given to borrowers, or we talk about interest rate in terms of the interest earned from deposit. But in this context, we are talking about interest rate, that's the percentage of the principal, okay, that is charged by lenders. So when SMEs approach the banks, the financial institutions for a facility, for a loan, the interest rate will determine a lot of things. Okay, if the interest rate is very high, so it's not going to encourage SMEs to borrow funds, because this is going to affect the profit margin. Okay, because it's a cost to the business. It's going to add to the cost of production. So if the cost of production is very high, definitely it's going to impact prices. And in an environment where there is very high level of inflationary pressure, if we increase prices, it's going to discourage consumers from purchasing. It's going to erode the purchasing powers of consumers, and definitely when people cannot consume more, it's going to affect the sales of SMEs, and once sales is affected, so definitely you can't produce more. It's going to go back and affect the profitability level of such firms, and when the profitability level of such firms drops, so definitely you can't produce more, you can't expand, and you can't even employ more. So that's when some firms talk about downsizing, right sizing. Instead of saying laying off of workers, you want to cut down on your human resource, because you don't really need a lot of people producing more. Okay, so high interest rate in terms of interest on facilities, on loans, is a major factor that would determine the productivity level of firms in a particular nation. It's also important to state this: when there are factors that will determine the interest rate of an economy. Okay, the interest rate prevalent in a nation. You have some developed nations where the interest rate is just a digit, maybe 6% interest rate, 9% interest rate, but there are factors that will affect that will determine that. And in developing countries, realize that it's always 2 digits. Okay, we have it as high as 30%, as high as 31%, as high as 29% in some cases, and we begin to wonder, why do we have 1 digit inflation rate, interest rate in a particular country, especially developed nations, and why do we have 2 digits? Okay, interest rate in developing nations. Okay, so we need to state that the interest rate in any economy is actually aimed on what the MPR is, on what the monetary policy rate is in that nation. So we need to mention what MPR is for those just hearing that for the first time. Monetary policy rate is the interest rate at which the central bank lends money to commercial banks, or the DMBs. We call them the deposit money banks. Okay, and it's also a monetary tool, of instrument used by the central bank of a nation, okay, to control money supply in order to achieve set macroeconomic goals or objectives. So the MPR rate will determine what the interest rate will be. Is the rate at which the benchmark rate at which the central bank will lend money to the banks, and because they need to fulfill their objective, or we call them the lender of last resort. The central bank of a country would control the money supply. The central bank of a country performs the duty of lender of last resort because they also loan money to commercial banks. So in order to curb one of the macroeconomic objective of government is to curb inflationary pressure, and inflation is when we talk about the sustained rise in prices of goods and services in a nation. So you want to cut down inflationary pressure, and because of that, one of the monetary policy tools that you can use that's proven to be very effective is monetary policy rate. So if you need to reduce the amount of money in circulation to bring down, the money supply in the country, so that you can cut down on inflationary pressure. You are going to have to increase the NPR rate. So, and when the NPR rate is increased, definitely the interest at which banks, the rates at which banks will lend to the public will be increased, and that when that is increased is going to discourage SMEs, from borrowing, and that will help to cut that money supply. But definitely we talk about conflicts of macroeconomic objective, because if you are trying to curb inflation, if you are not careful, you are going to it's going to help to spike, to increase the level of unemployment in such nature. So these are conflicts that would occur, and that's why government will have to give up some particular objectives to achieve other objectives. So usually you can talk about interest rate without talking about inflationary pressure. When we're talking about the most last couple of episodes, the most thriving SMEs, we mentioned Rwanda, we mentioned Kenya, the most thriving SMEs in Africa. We mentioned these countries, and if you look at it, you realize that the interest rate on loans in this country is very low. But now, one thing you need to also realize is that it will be low if the inflation rate in such economy is also low. But in a country where the inflation rate is high, definitely interest rate will be high. That is, the NPR rate will be high. So, and the interest rate on loans will also be high, because the NPR is the benchmark. So if the NPR is about 15%, definitely banks will put their own margin in terms of our own administrative expenses. It will be high. So if it's 15%, it could be as high as 22.5 to about 23% interest rate on facilities given to SM. So these are factors. Anytime you look at a particular economy, and so the interest rate is very low, definitely you need to check the inflation rate in such economy, because that will also be a determining factor of what the NPR, the monetary policy rate, will be. And actually, in the central bank, there's always what we call the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee, which is in charge of checking, of regulating, and the NPR. That's why you see that in some economies they keep reviewing according to the dictate of the pace of the economy. You keep reviewing. There could be an upward review of NPR. There could be a downward review of NPR. It depends on what is happening in terms of inflationary pressure in the economy at that point in time. So let's consider a few countries around the globe and look at the NPL. Okay, the rate, the UK's NPL, the Bank of England base rate stood about 4.5% as of February 2025. In Uganda, the NPL stood about 9.75%. Okay, so that you can see why it's like that. That's why we have striving SMEs. The NPL is about 9.75%. In Zambia, the central bank, increased it was raised to about 14.5%. Okay, in Kenya, the Central Bank of Kenya lowered the CPR to about 10.75%. Okay, that was at the meeting held as a 5th of February 2025 this year, and that's been about the fourth time that has been reduced. Okay, and in Malawi, as at January 30, 2025 this year, the NPL stood about 26%. In Egypt, the Central Bank of Egypt pegged the NPL, that's monetary policy rate, to about 28.25%, and the inflation rate in Egypt is about 23.2%. So you can see if the inflation rate is 2 digits, of course the NPL rate will be 2 digits as well. In Ghana, the NPR is about 27% as at the 27th of January 2025, and the inflation rate in Ghana as at February stood about 23.1%. country that is worthy to consider is Mauritius. The NPR in Mauritius is about 4.5%. Okay, and according to the trading economics, the inflation rate in Mauritius as at January this year is less than 2%. So you can see, if I told you, if it's one digit inflation, if the inflation figure, the inflation rate is one digit, definitely the interest rate, the NPR rate, will be one digit. So in Mauritius, the inflation figure is about less than 2%. It varies, but about 2%, and the NPR rate is about 4.5%. That's the way it works, in the economy. So if the inflation rate is low, definitely the NPR rate will actually be low. Okay, in Rwanda, the NPR rate is about 6.5%, and so also, the inflation rate in Rwanda has stood about maybe 5.7% as at January 2025, reducing from over a 1-year high about 6.4%, and even the central bank's target is to have a range of about 3% to 8%. So no wonder Rwanda has one of the best thriving SMEs in Africa. So these are factors. So interest rates, will be high because it's going to be in the NPR rates, and the monetary policy rate will be high. The MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee, will set it to be high if the inflationary pressure in such an economy is high, because as economists we believe that inflation is a monetary phenomenon, that we have a lot of money supply, money flowing in the economy. Okay, and we want to bring it down, we want to curb it. Yes, I know that a lot of people have argued. I recall one of the episodes when one of our program series when I talked about inflation, and there were a lot of arguments around it to say that, look, in Nigeria, let's take a particular example, that let's cite it to Nigeria. Are you saying it's a case of so much money in circulation? And I say that it's the peculiarity of Nigeria is stagflation. But when you talk about inflation, the way it should be is you have a lot of money in circulation, and it means that it could also imply free funds in the economy. So you want to cut down on money supply. But in a situation where we have high rates of inflation, prices going up, and we see a high level of unemployment, that is a rare kind, which is stagflation, because they have both at the same time in the economy. Okay, but we know prices have continued to go down right now in the economy, and this has been because of the various intervention by the federal government, by the central bank, and that we hope that we're going to see more of these positive multiplier effects in the economy. We want to see more commodity prices go down. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining. Today we are discussing challenges, obstacles, barriers that SMEs face in developing economies to accessing finance. Okay, the first one we mentioned is administrative burden, long and complex loan procedures, and the second that we have mentioned is high interest rate. So we mentioned the third one on today's episode, and that is financial literacy. The level of financial literacy would influence the accessibility to finance by SMEs. And when you talk about financial literacy, you're talking about the ability to understand, having the right knowledge, the right skills to take informed financial decisions. I would say having the right skills to take smart financial decisions. Okay, and I like this definition by the Global System for Mobile Communications Association. That's the GSMA definition of financial literacy, which is the ability to make sound financial decisions, acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, confidence, and competence to use financial products and services, and act act in one's best financial interest based on individual economic and social circumstances. Our social circumstances are not going to be the same. Our individual economic circumstances will not be the same. Ability to be able to make informed decisions based on the peculiarity of your environment, okay, it really matters a lot. So level of financial literacy will affect that. It will affect how you take, investment decisions, how you take financing decisions. Of course, because we talk about a mismatch in investment. You can't match a long-term investment with a short-term loan. It's going to be a mismatch. It's going to pose problems for you as an investor, as an entrepreneur. So having the ability to know that, okay, what kind of funds do I have, what will be my cash flow needs, what will be my working capital needs, what do I need at each phase of this project, how do I take my investment decisions, okay, do I need to conduct investment appraisal. And there are various methods of conducting investment appraisal. You want to use your payback method, the MPV method, want to use your IRR. These are basic financial knowledge that you need to have, okay? How do I rate funds, okay? Do you have to be listed? Do you want to be listed? There are different ways, If I can't be listed because I'm still small as an SME, and the other money market instrument I can go for. You need this financial knowledge, okay, to take more financial informed decisions. In order to even talk about, you can even talk about effective strategic planning, talking about couching your long-term goals. We can talk about being ambidextrous, what I want to do for the now, what I want to do to keep innovating for the future. If you don't have all of these skills, because whatever plan that you come up with, there will be financial implications of those plans, and you need to be well versed, okay, in these things. I'm not saying get certified as a chartered accountant. You don't have to be an economist, but that's some basic knowledge that SMEs should know, entrepreneurs should know. And this global concern, according to IMF 2018 report, OECD report as of 2099, the report showed the need to improve financial literacy levels, okay, corporate reporting and business planning skills of SMEs, particularly the executives, okay. So you can't, like I said, you can't talk about strategic planning. You have to plan strategically, having your plan for the year, your business plans, your human resource plans. What do you need? So whatever plan you're coming up with, there will always be the financial aspect, that will be the human resource aspect, that would be the material aspect that you need to execute those plans. So you actually need all of these things. That to collaborate this, our study of the EIB, the European Investment Bank, even as far back as 2016, where banks expressed that dissatisfaction with the level of financial literacy of their potential MSMEs clients. Okay, and the implication of this low level of financial literacy is that it's going to limit the likelihood of alternative financing investment by MSMEs. That different financing options, okay, you could have the venture capital, the business angels. Now some people don't even know all of these things, okay, so how do you want to take up investment opportunities, financing opportunities, we don't even know they exist at all. And I try to look around the globe to say, okay, let's look at countries with very high level of financial literacy across the globe. And I didn't go too far. Let's look at, we're talking about developing economies with my lenses on Africa. And so let's look at it. There was a report by S&P Global Financial Literacy Survey, and Botswana is considered the country with the highest financial literacy rate, with about 52% of its population being financially literate, and that is high. In Africa, we have Botswana about 52%, and that will speak to the level of investment in such a country. It will speak to the level of growth of SMEs in such a country. And in Africa, we have Somalia ranking as the country with the lowest level of financial literacy, and now with about 15% of its population being financially literate, okay. And I looked at another country in Africa. Okay, and that's no other but Nigeria. And we have about a report that was brought up. We have about 26% of our population being financially literate. Okay, so if you have 26%, that is very low, pretty low, and that even speak to the long-term survival, okay, of a firm. If you're not financially literate, how do you get responsive to global economic shocks? How do you get responsive to if your continent, the specific, your peculiar continent, economic shocks? How do you respond to it? Now let's even narrow down to the country as well. So it's important that if we want to talk about building transgenerational SMEs, building generational SMEs, we need to be deliberate about improving the level of financial literacy among our population. Now, and I always say that we need to be deliberate about this. Anything that we want to do, we say that we need to take it back to the schools. Okay, yes, we are going to teach them the math, we're going to teach them the English, the subject, okay, but financial literacy should also be taught, should be taken back to the schools. Okay, cut them young, teach them about financial literacy. If we are telling them to be entrepreneurs, and I like what was done, what is being practiced in Nigeria, okay, where we take entrepreneurship as a course, and I've seen that that trend change among our undergraduates. When we were in school, a lot of us went into business, but right now you see our undergraduates, even those with the first class or the first class grade, actually learning one skill or the other, and they start it right from school. Okay, so I want us to see us taking financial literacy very deliberate, that even if you are in the sciences, whether you are in the art class, you are in the commercial class, you be limited to commercial student alone, because even when you're a doctor, medical doctor, you need that aspect of financial literacy to float your hospital, to make it profitable. Okay, those in the lab too, they need that level of financial literacy. So if it is that important, then we need to go back to our curriculum to revisit it, to review it. And I like what NUC did also in Nigeria, where right now for undergraduates, especially I can speak for those in economics department, right now from 100 level they take what we call financial development. So it's not optional, you're going to take it at a course. Okay, but I want to see that go to other departments, be it medical students, law students, be it English students, be it philosophy. I would that to be a course I'll be taking across board. Just like entrepreneurship is taken across board, I want to see financial literacy taken up in our schools. Now you could ask, why am I talking this way? Is there any country that's done it? Is there any country that's taken it back? Yes, I look forward to an episode where we dedicated to reviewing what this country has done in terms of financial literacy, in terms of re-evaluating, revising the curriculum to inculcate financial literacy, and that is Denmark. Okay, Denmark implemented compulsory financial education in its curriculum in 2015, and as today, and the result has shown that this decision has paid off, because it boasts of about a rate of 71% of its population being financially literate. In fact, this is actually one of the highest in the world in terms of financial literacy, and research has also shown that 32% of them are more likely to actively manage their savings compared to their counterpart without such level of financial literacy. Okay, Denmark has done it. We need to revisit what Denmark has done in details to see what lessons can we developing economists learn from Denmark. Okay, which is important. So we take it back to the schools, we take it back to our curriculum. Financial literacy should not be limited to commercial class alone, because everyone, no matter the field you are, you're going to have to have that level of financial literacy. Okay, because well, I hope you found today's episode interesting, intriguing, informative. Okay, this is all we can take today. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you join us same time next Friday, 5 p.m. WAT. And remember to join our other programs Monday 2 Fridays, Monday, same time. There are other interesting, intriguing, informative, expository programs of my colleagues from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, same time, 5 p.m. W80. And remember that Amagate for your consulting, communications, training needs, we have you covered. To learn more about us, kindly visit our website www.theamagate.org. Then our social media platforms and those are there for you as well to check us up. On Facebook is Amagate, on Instagram is Amagate, on LinkedIn is Amagate. I'll leave that with the words of John W. Rogers Jr. He says that financial literacy is just as important in life as other basics. And Robert Kiyosaki said, "We are not taught financial literacy in school. It takes a whole lot of work and time to change your thinking and to become financially literate." So I'm also advocating that financial literacy should be taught across board. Sciences, pure sciences, the medical school, to the arts, not just commercial students, to the social sciences, mathematics sciences. We need to cut it across board. Financial literacy should be taken back to our schools, to everyone. Okay, thank you so much once again for joining me till I find my way to your devices next Friday. I'm saying stay blessed and